Emmanuel Macron is here. Congratulations to him. He's won a second term, albeit in a difficult manner because he had to go to a second round, isn't it?
No, normally the French electoral system has 2-round system. So after the first round, the two runner-ups, the winner and the go for the second round.
Automatically?
Yeah.
Even if you won the first round by 70%?
No, I think it's a staggered election where you don't have that clear...
That is when no one wins by 50% plus one. Like in Ghana, same. You go to a second round.
But most of the elections actually go into second round.
Because nobody wins in the first round.
But then...
So the first round was quite close. Yeah. And people suspected that he will be in trouble in the second round. But he was able to say.
Yeah, he sailed through.
So he's a center-right wing politician.
Center-right.
Okay.
And then his immediate, contender was Marine Le Pen. She belongs to the far-right wing of the political spectrum. But then the election that brought Macron to power actually did one very important to the French politics. It displayed the two traditional parties, the right-wing, the Gaullist party, which was formerly led by Jacques Chirac and the likes of Nicolas Sarkozy, were displaced from the political scene. And likewise, same thing happened to the left. The party of François Hollande actually also were like. So that election on that particular year that brought Macron to power actually realigned French politics because it brought two outsiders, per se, in quote, into the political mainstream. That is Emmanuel Macron of the center-right and then Marine Le Pen of the far-right. But then if you look at so due to that, in this recent election, what the left-wing, party was that they formed, a coalition around this guy. He came third in the election, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He was actually born in French, Algeria, Tangiers, in the international zone. So he has a lot of similarity with Bernie Sanders. He's a bit of a maverick, unpredictable somehow. But then he's more like, let me see, someone who just sees the issue as he sees it.
So he came third in this election?
He came third. And then there's this belief in certain media that, his supporters actually voted for Macron.
In the second round?
In the second round.
And that's what tilted it in favor of...
Yeah, to a certain extent. Because the abstention was also very, very huge.
The abstention, that's the difference of those who voted in the first round.
And those
who didn't vote in the second round.
Who didn't vote at all.
Who didn't vote at all compared to 2017's election. I see, okay.
So this is the results so far.
The results outcome in the second round.
In the second round.
58.5, 41.4. That's significant. That's a significant.
But then there's also another significant thing here. For the first time, a far-right candidate in France has been able to cross the 40% threshold.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because in 20...
So what was the rhetoric of the far-right? Because we know that there's a lot of conversation in France these days about the demographics of the population. You know, they have a lot of immigrants, high immigrant population on the cards. They also have religious observations because Islam seems to have taken over to be the majority religion in France, and that's because of evangelizing a lot of young people. And what is happening these days is that when the young people are evangelizing to Islam in Europe, they don't change their name. So you are Thomas, you are Paul,
just like
so Thomas Partey is Muslim, Paul Pogba is Muslim. Yes, so you don't really look at it from their names. But when they do the population census and they sign into religion, Islam is leading. So all those things were being observed. So this increase in the center-right might mean that the indigenous French people are getting concerned about the population demographics of their country. Yeah,
demographic is also a major concern, and then the issue of religion itself is another, and then another factor is also the issue of Eurosceptic. She's one of the main critics of...
wanting to follow the path of Britain.
Yeah, Britain. And I think she rode on popular anger with Europe.
So if she had won, she was going to launch a withdrawal from European Union like Britain has done.
She would succeed.
She was going to ask for a referendum to do that if she had won.
She may not succeed in doing that because if you understand French politics, this semi-presidential system where the parliament equally has a huge role to play. So in as much as she might be the president and the head of state.
But she appoints the prime minister in parliament.
But it depends on the strength of the party in parliament.
The number of seats that you have.
So even if your opponent is the largest party in parliament, you have no choice.
So she's going to have 41. They're going to have 41% representation in the parliament. That's not.
No. They'll be going for parliamentary election in June.
In June.
Yeah. So now all eyes
the system. Yes.
So all eyes is now on the parliamentary election. But then I think it also stems from the French policy of assimilation. You see, they believe that you have to be a Frenchman culturally to be seen as a genuine French person. And there's also been this divide.
And it doesn't matter if you are black, actually.
Yeah.
You can be assimilated even if you are black, like Omar Bongo was.
So there have also been this division between the descendant of the early immigrants and the traditional indigenous French itself. There's this divide by some of the youthful, they are outside the system. You can't remember the rioting in some suburb of Paris that was fueled by, what do you call it, existing anger about racism and discrimination, alleged, because we can't really...
Yeah, for sure, yes.
So there's that divide. And also there's this issue of religion. You know, with the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack, it brought religion to the forefront, and Islam became a very hot issue in France.
Yes.
Some people felt that Islam is trying to become like a state within a state, because the Islamic culture is to a certain extent.
But Islam is gaining numbers in France.
Not just that, but the culture of covering of the faces, the veiling became a very hot issue. And to a certain extent, Macron also tilted a bit to her position. You know, he also tried to regulate.
Yeah, but he's right. So yes, but he's
center right.
Yeah, but once he's right, he will be thinking like that.
Yeah, he tilted to a position to a certain point. You know, he attempted to regulate sermons of the imams and brought what he called the French Islam, and that became a hot issue within the Islam.
What is French Islam?
Like, he felt that Islam, as it's been preached, and most of the mosques were actually bringing imam from North Africa and the likes. They are preaching an Islam that he think was not compatible with French culture. So he felt that kind of things should be regulated. So one of the things that you can no more invite imams from North Africa, and a lot of things and some regulations were brought. And there was this ban of hijab in public, on hijab, veiling in public schools.
In France?
Yeah.
For the students or the teachers?
Students.
For the students,
yeah, and teachers. And so people felt he was tilting towards the right wing because he wants to gain some support from that.
From there, yeah.
Politically.
Most likely he did.
Yeah. No, he did. So you get, but now, so what his victory does now is that it gives EU a stability. You know, there was a transition in Germany from Angela Merkel to the new prime minister, and then Chancellor.
Call it, yeah.
So you could see that in France and Germany are the two most important countries in the EU
right now. Yeah.
So had she won, being a Eurosceptic, that would have created a lot of disruption within the EU. Looking at how the confrontation, we know the confrontation between Russia and Ukraine, on one hand is between NATO, that encompasses US and Russia. But on the other side, there's a EU angle of it, because almost all EU countries are NATO members, and they're equally dependent on Russian gas to a certain extent at various, what you call, dependency ratio. Some are more dependent than the other. So had a Eurosceptic won the election and become the leader of France, that would have disrupted a lot of stability. So having gained that stability now, EU can now focus and put it house in order. Now there's this
there's no election in Germany anytime soon.
No election.
Okay.
You know, just this Wednesday, Russia threatened to shut down, what do you call it, the pipeline that supply gas to Poland. But there's this belief by some analysts that it is meant deliberately to divide EU. That if able,
so Russia would like to divide EU.
Yeah, so by shutting down the pipeline, those that are more dependent
will now come and respond.
Will call for lesser.
I think when you get to the voting pattern, we'll begin to understand the way the world is reacting after the war actually started. The reactions before the war and the reactions after the war had started is quite different. Let's move on. So who is this?
This is Assimi Goïta, the leader of the Malian junta.
Okay. Is he the one who said the language of...
we'll be reverted to Bambara and then...
Okay, so that's Mali, that's not Niger. I said Niger in my introduction. Okay, so let's move on. So what's he waiting for now? So he now has to confront the French in case the French decide to launch a full assault to reclaim what they have in West Africa. He will be a target, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he will be a target, but we don't know if it will be done just like what was done to, what do you call him, Thomas Sankara, the famous execution of Thomas Sankara. Would there be an insider coup? But then also we need to understand certain things that within the Francophone countries, France has a bit of a, how do you call it? Is it a double standard or so? At one point, it preaches the mantle of democracy, tries to portray itself as apostle of human rights, but France equally has a record of backing dictators in Africa.
Well, all the Western powers sort of, if you look at the Cold War and the proxy wars that were fought, in those days, the wars were not about exporting democracy. It was about survival of the regime and the evangelization of a philosophy. So that America supported Mobutu Sese Seko, who was a dictator, but they criticized other dictators like Eduardo dos Santos of Angola because he was left-wing. So it was a really ideological war.
But for France, it goes beyond the Cold War.
It has gone beyond.
You know, after the 1990 instauration of democracy across the continent, France still continued to support dictators like Eyadema. The Yassingbe family were backed by France.
Like Houphouët-Boigny.
Even the likes of late Idris Deby.
Yes.
Was sustained by French support. And even
but we have seen France permit the third term of Alhassan Ouattara, hasn't it?
No, I'm saying that France, to a certain extent, has a problem. At one point, it supports democracy. And in the other view, it also supports dictatorship. So there's this confusion of its policy in Africa. And there were those who felt that when Macron came to power, he was young, he was dynamic. People thought his policy towards Africa would have been something different from the old France-Afrique that sort of make the Francophone countries more like vassals to the feudal overlord.
Yeah, suppliers of raw material.
People were highly disappointed in him. So if you look at the likes of Assimi Goïta, the Doumbouya in Guinea, these are just, I think, the face of general anti-French sentiment brewing within
the ranks of the military?
Not just the ranks of the military.
But it's more dangerous if it's the ranks of the military.
Across the country. But you see, there's one thing that is very important in the rank of the military that, Thomas Sankara once said that a soldier without an ideological or political training is a potential criminal. And I think, ever since his death, he actually became a martyr. Most Francophone countries. I think some of these soldiers are taking cue from him and trying to be like him in one way or the other.
So they're trying to be liberators.
Per se.
And in that context, do they see the French, France-Afrique as an enemy? A philosophical and contextual enemy?
Obviously, they see the French as an exploiting power. They see the French as a colonial power. And then they equally see ECOWAS and its call for democracy as part of the problem. Because they believe that both the French and the ECOWAS, have not really understood the problems or the challenges of their respective countries.
If they were being buoyed on by Russian activity, Russian military activity within the zone, right now, will that change?
It wouldn't change. One of the reasons why
But Russia needs those activities in Ukraine, in Kiev.
One of the reasons why they opted for Russian support was two. Even when the French deployed their soldiers, the French soldiers were more equipped than the African armies. Anytime there's an attack, the casualty on the side of the African military was far more higher than what the French sustained. So there's this belief that the political class has lost touch. So when the coup was executed, you could see the Malian coup came against the backdrop of a very huge and popular protest led by Mahmoud Dicko, the Islamic cleric in Mali. You could also see the Guinea coup, was certainly because of the unpopularity of Alpha Conde's third term. But these are things that these coup protests felt that at that point in time, France should have stood by the people, but he stood on the wrong side by standing with his henchmen. So to them, France is part of the problem.
So they welcome Russian support.
No, you see, the reason why they welcome Russian support is for the veto. The first thing that happened was
for Russia to be able to veto a general Security Council resolution that is targeted against them. Let's look at the voting.
Because one thing they had was that, the first coup, there was two coups in Mali. In the first coup, ECOWAS was able to successfully pressure Assimi Goïta to hand over power to a quasi-civilian government. So he calculated very well that now he needs a stronger power behind him. So after initiating the second successful coup, he quickly went for Russian support.
So that if a motion is moved at the Security Council, Russia can veto it.
And then
that's very clever.
And that decision become unilateral, so internationally non-binding.
Whatever decision that's taken beyond the veto.
So he shielded himself from the consequences of...
So what is this?
These are the votes. There was this resolution that was brought into the UN General Assembly after Russia vetoed the initial resolution at the Security Council was vetoed by Russia. So there was this attempt to garner...
That was a resolution not to attack Ukraine because a sovereign country...
That condemned Russian...
potential attack on Ukraine at the time.
No, that was after the attack itself.
After the attack had started.
Condemning the invasion itself.
Okay. So this is how the voting...
These are the voting patterns.
So voted in favor of what?
In favor of the resolution that condemned the invasion.
This is voting against Russia. So this is African countries you listed here?
Yeah, that voted against.
This is how African countries voted. So Benin, Botswana, Cape Verde, Chad, Comoros, Ivory Coast... significantly. Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Egypt, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Libya, Malawi, Mauritania, Mauritius, Niger, Nigeria, significant. Rwanda, Sao Tome and Principe, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Tunisia, and Zambia. All these African countries voted against Russia. Abstaining are these African countries. Algeria, Angola, Burundi, Central African Republic, Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, Madagascar, Mali, Mozambique, Namibia, Senegal, South Africa, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe is significant. So significant here is South Africa, Very important.
We'll come and look at
the relationships.
The
Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Uganda, Senegal, then you have Algeria and Angola. That's quite interesting.
And then only Eritrea voted against, actually.
Against Russia?
No, against the resolution. That is, Russia was not...
against. No, they not abstain, but vote against Eritrea.
And it's not...
That is of Ethiopia.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that Eritrea voted against... Because Eritrea has always been at loggerheads with the whole world itself, not just the West. You know,
for what?
It's a very close country, more like... It's the most isolated African country, so it's most like...
Eritrea is off Ethiopia.
Yeah, just around the Horn of Africa, the tip of Ethiopia.
Yeah, used to be part of Ethiopia.
Yeah, it is the most isolated African country, very close, just like the North Korean, highly undemocratic, with a lot,
Eritrea?
With a lot of human rights violations, as reported by several international rights organizations. But this country didn't even record the vote at all.
They didn't do abstain, they didn't vote for, they didn't vote against. So that's Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Ethiopia,
Eswatini.
That
is Swaziland.
Okay. Guinea, Bissau, Morocco, and Togo.
But then if you look at the numbers, it looks as if the numbers are not in favor of Russia.
Yes, 28 is a large number that voted.
But then let's take the countries in isolation. Russia hasn't really fared bad so far. The most important countries that actually voted in favor of the resolution here are: one, Egypt is a very significant country because of its influence. Then you have the likes of Nigeria here. Then we still have Ghana, which is a very important one. And then we have Kenya. But it's not surprising that Kenya actually also voted condemning Russian invasion, because Kenya was the most vocal African country on the onset of the, the invasion. You remember the passionate speech by the Kenyan ambassador to the UN, where he compared Russian activities to colonial invasion of Africa in 1884, and the subsequent vow by Africa not to redraw borders. But then if you also look at this, but then one problem with my concern was actually when Ghana voted in support of the resolution. You know, we have this policy of non-alignment.
Yes.
But technically, by voting in support of the resolution, we've technically aligned ourselves. So these countries have...
No, but non-alignment was about the Cold War. The non-alignment movement
the danger of it
was about the Cold War, to say we are not to the east and we are not to the west.
Okay, fine.
We are non-aligned and we are moving on.
But the non-alignment, the Cold War might have ended.
But non-alignment, the non-aligned movement is now... It's still there, but it's not relevant anymore because of the objectives.
But the problem with this thing is that, you see, the situation is more like an emerging Cold War. Because if you look at the BRICS economy, the probable next superpowers that are coming, out of the five, only Brazil has been a bit open in its condemnation of Russia to a certain extent. The likes of China, India, South Africa have kept their cards to themselves, calling for dialogue.
Let's move on so we don't lose time. So what's this now?
But so if you look at what I said, Ghana initially voted against, in favor of the resolution.
Okay.
But in this vote that expelled Russia from the Human Rights Council, Ghana actually abstained, which I think is the best decision so far.
So this vote is different from the resolution?
Yeah, the first one was condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Okay, this one is about what?
This one is about Russia's presence in the Human Rights Council. People felt that its invasion and been characterized by the, report of war crime here and there. Russia does not deserve to be on the Human Rights Council.
And we abstained.
And we abstained.
Ghana abstained. Who else changed their vote? Nigeria abstained as well. I see Niger abstained, Singapore abstained, South Africa abstained.
Yeah. And the South Africa didn't change its position. And another significant thing is that even Kenya, which was very vocal in the first instance,
also abstained here.
Yeah.
And so the dynamics are changing. They think that the invasion may be wrong because they voted against it, but now they think Russia should not be expelled from the human rights.
I think the change is being stated by China's response. You know, China is Africa's biggest trading partner, and China equally has its own issues with the West. So by voting in support of the resolution that condemns Russia, you are technically telling China that in case of any issue between China and the West, you might still vote with the West. And that's why Africa is caught in a very difficult situation. On one hand, you have our interest to appeal to or defend. And on the other hand, we don't want to be caught on the wrong side of US, because if America should impose sanctions on us economically, we are doomed. And another important thing is Afghanistan.
What happened in Afghanistan?
It's actually it's still on the Human Rights Council.
It's on?
Yeah. But that is a defeated government, which has no presence on the ground.
Yes.
So, inevitably, whether it's there or not, you are still, what you call it, not really dealing with the Afghan people and who is in charge of their affairs.
I see. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. And so now, this is interesting. What map is this?
This is what you call it, supposed French positions within the Sahel, where French has its own bases. There are temporary bases and there, but these are the number of troops. But then you see, in places like Ivory Coast, where France has, I think, permanent base, and then in places like Gabon, these are not contested zones. But what may happen in, the problem might be more of this kind of pressure in Libya and not in Mali. Because in Mali, the French has been expelled and they've relocated to Niger. But that has not stopped the attack from the militants. And then the military men tout themselves to be experts. So perhaps if they fail to deliver...
Where's Mali on your map? Here?
Here is Mali.
Oh, that's Mali. Yeah. Okay, all right.
And then here is Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, okay.
No, here is, I think, Burkina Faso. And Mali is just around this tip.
Okay.
But the problem is that the insurgency is around where the three borders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger converge. That's why the insurgency is more hotter. But in the Malian case, I think Algeria must be brought into the solution. Because at the northern tip of Mali, aside the Tuaregs, you have the, what do you call the Arabs. And most of the militants in northern Mali.
So there are 350 to 400 French troops in Ouagadougou.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are 900 French troops in Abidjan.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are 350 in Dakar.
Dakar, Senegal.
Okay.
These are light foothold. But in the Malian case, there were about, I think, 1,000 more.
And they are all gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you see, the problem now is that taking the French troops out and bringing the Wagner group, Russia can still maintain its position. Because one of the...
Doesn't Russia need those men in Kiev?
One advantage it gives Russia is plausible deniability. You don't hold a state liable for what the private military...
I understand, but right now, Macron is ready to fight.
Yeah.
He has his elections behind him. Russia is in the middle of a fight.
I don't think Macron would want to opt for military confrontation. But he would
like to save his territory.
He would now promote talks more on human rights, democracy, in order to discredit...
Yes, in all of that. Yeah. But he would like to secure his territory.
No, but you see, in the case of Mali, he can't confront that situation militarily.
But if ECOWAS were to confront the junta and the junta goes away, French sort of take over.
Fine, but the question is, has ECOWAS really displayed the balls to invade Mali?
Yeah, but France can go behind ECOWAS to do that. Now that Macron is
so there's always been this question whether ECOWAS, sometimes when it sends its deployment, is actually deploying according to its own interests or per the French interests. But the fact here is that, you see, the main situation now is Algeria. Most of the militants like Bel Mukhtar, so of Algerian origin. And Algeria was able to defeat the Islamic militant during the Algerian Civil War, I think in the 1990s. So gaining that experience and how it was able to quell the Islamic uprising, if Algeria is brought into the dialogue, you see, we always look at it from the ECOWAS point of view. But the war in Mali has a flow of arms from Libya. It has relation with the Algerian militants, who were ex-militants in the civil war.
But is France not in control of Algeria as well?
No. There was this different dispute between Algeria and what do you call it? You know, there's this, France ruled Algeria for 130 years. And throughout that period, there were a series of human rights violations that amount to war.
But Algeria abstained.
That amounts to war crime to a certain extent, per some estimate.
Yeah.
And there's this clamor for, is it restitution or restoration by the Algerian government?
Of that?
Yeah.
I see.
And then recently, there's this argument about what the Algerian government described as genocide. It's not seen as genocide.
Okay, so Algeria is not a friend to the French when it comes to helping the French
to
take any territory.
The tension emerged recently.
Yeah, it looks like that. Yeah. Given that they also abstained against the Russian matter, they are probably looking at Russia more favorably than they are looking at France. For Algeria,
it has to do with, aside probably relation with France, what do you call it? Because Algeria actually exports gas to Europe. So it's equally more dependent on European economy. If they don't buy it, gas.
Algeria exports gas to Europe. Okay, so those European countries that are fighting Russia, so they can cut off Algeria's gas. So I think for Algeria, the reason for the abstinence has to do with arms sales. Yeah, but gas is now a priced asset, given the Russian situation. Gas is priced.
Most of Algerian weapons actually come from Soviet Union and Russia. So they need spares and the rest to maintain those kind of things. And Algeria is equally at loggerhead with Morocco over the Sahara. And there's this belief by Algerian that the West is more in line or in bed with Morocco than its argument. So for it, that is why it has to
And which map is this?
This is also another map that shows, I think, the position of Russian military presence. One is Sudan, and then there's this Russian presence in Mali and in Libya. But then, the danger here is that, okay, we could get into era where Russia begins to strengthen anti-democratic government.
Dictators, if you like, in Africa.
In Africa. Another concern is...
Does Russia have the space and resources for that, given that they are prosecuting a major war?
Another advantage of Wagner Group is that they are mostly securing places that have natural resources in huge quantity.
But that's why everyone else is interested.
And it's, what do you call it? It's more like a quid pro quo.
Yes.
Give and take.
So they give you regime security, and you give them access to the natural resources.
So
I understand
paying for the Wagner Group
will be paid for by the
state
resources.
And the resources.
Okay.
So Russia, it doesn't really affect Russia's
that there's an off-taker.
Yeah, so it doesn't really affect Russia's coffers. So it allows it to continue its own.
But that's a carry-forward payment. You have to send in the insurgents. They have to succeed. They have to secure the ground. And then the miners come in to mine the gold. So you don't have the money at the time you are sending them. You will get the money later on.
No.
And I'm saying that given Russia's expanse of war in Ukraine, which is now becoming a big war, do they have the resources to commit to send these guys in to secure their resources?
Yeah, I think they surely do, because if you look at a much weaker country like Iran, been a loggerhead to the West since 1979, having been sanctioned. Iran used to be the most sanctioned country before Russia took over. But has the sanction ever stopped Iran activity across the region and falling of resources?
Across their region?
Yeah.
In the Arab region?
Yeah, back from
Osama bin Laden and all of that?
No, Iran, because of its Shia, what do you call it? It's a loggerhead to the Osama bin Laden, the Sunnis.
The Sunnis, yeah.
But there's this belief that Iran sent over $6 billion on Hezbollah a year alone.
On Hezbollah?
Hezbollah alone.
Hezbollah in
Lebanon.
In Lebanon.
And Iran has been financing
in the occupied territory.
Yeah. And Iran has been financing Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi rebels, the Shia militias in Iraq. If a much weaker Iran is able to sustain that kind of...
But is Hezbollah that strong?
Yes,
Hamas, do they boast of nuclear, modern weapons?
Hezbollah is the most armed non-state actor in the world. It has 160,000 missiles of all sorts.
Yeah, and what do they do? To attack Israel? They never win anything against the Israeli army, Hezbollah, do they? They cause a lot of trouble, but they never win anything. There was this
statement that Naim Qasim made, Hezbollah's deputy general secretary. He said, kill one Israeli soldier, and the generals begin to cry.
But in terms of damage, they can do some damage, but they've not won anything.
He said that is the major point of departure. For them, it's about
killing one soldier.
No, keeping principle. But
fighting for the occupied territory.
But the 2006 war, if you look at aside, the casualty was higher on the Lebanese side.
All the time, yeah.
But there's equally this fact that has been established by human rights organization. In every confrontation, Israel kills more civilians than militants themselves. One, it destroys more civilian infrastructure.
That may be because there's no real military that Israel is fighting. What Israel is fighting is guerrillas. So there's no military. So you can't determine military infrastructure in Hamas and Hezbollah places.
And that brings this question to mind. If Israel is allowed to do those things and go scot-free, why is everybody pouncing hard on Russia?
Okay, let's move on. You were going to show. So who is this?
This is the head of the Wagner Group.
He's not a military man.
No, but he's from the same.
Like Putin.
He's from the same hometown with Putin.
So he's also trained in KGB and type of thing.
He's not really.
He's an intelligence type of guy.
He's not really a KGB guy, but he was a chef, a very renowned chef that was very close to Putin.
Chef cooking.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then he was able to create the Wagner Group, I think, somewhere around 2015 when the Russian war started.
So the actors of the Wagner Group are Russian?
They are ex-Russian military.
Okay, ex-Russian military.
And Soviets and soldiers from other Soviet countries.
Okay.
And I think, so there's this question about, is there a direct relation between Wagner Group and the Russian state? Or it's just like the normal indirect relation?
You can't find evidence of that, so you can't really answer it. But you can talk about it.
Yeah. So, but then, one thing is that Putin might not even need to take away the whole Wagner Group from
West Africa.
From West Africa. If you look at the amount of resources that is being channeled to Ukraine, it tells you that Russia still has more weapons that has not been exhausted. But then the fact is that the Ukrainians have equally been able to show resolve. We can't dispute that. And another thing is that they've been able to identify Russia's miscalculation and weakness and capitalize on that.
Sorry.
So, but what we'll be seeing now is that we may see entrenchment of anti-democratic regime, because the military regime in Sudan is now being shielded by Russian veto. You have the likes of Central African Republic, the chaos. And that is that anywhere there's chaos is where Russia tends to make. So
okay, so let's look at this map, which is interesting. This is the map of how countries who can use the veto at the Security Council have applied it since the United Nations was formed. And you have Russia leading. Yeah,
Russia and Soviet Union, when you combine the two, they've always led, followed by the United States. But then people felt that and then another benefit of the current Ukrainian invasion is that it has exposed the weakness of the whole international security architecture. You know, the whole thing was born out of hegemonic peace, whereby the winners of the war had a seat on the table. So you have the likes, that's why you have the exclusion of Germany.
Yeah, Germany is not here.
A very important country.
Because they lost the war.
Yeah, you have the exclusion of what do you call it, Japan.
They lost.
They lost the war.
Italy?
No, France.
Italy is not there.
Italy is not there also.
They also lost the war.
So it's like the whole the international system was born out of hegemonic peace. That is one, imposed by the Allies, the victorious
winners,
Allies.
Yeah.
And another the second problem with the international security architecture is that it was formulated when about a third of the world were under colonial rule.
Okay.
The whole of Africa.
Okay, so it was thought that these people were representing that group.
Yeah. So it was thought that because
United Kingdom control and France.
Yeah, so they were representing those. So the world was covered.
That's covered, yeah.
But now having gained independent, these countries are now fighting for.
So we are looking for a non-aligned seat, isn't it? We're looking for a seat for Arabs are looking for a seat, and Africans are looking for a seat.
And even Germans, and the Germans, Japan, India, Brazil also looking for a seat.
Do the Germans deserve it?
Well, I think what is needed is that we need a coherent reform. But there's been this reform that has been made. But I see it to be more like a reform of convenience.
But that one, they are looking to give Africa, the black people of the world, a seat. We're a billion people now.
There's been this clamor for realignment of the veto power seat. But the recent reform that was passed is more like a reform of convenience for these countries.
For those already on it.
Yeah. Now the only thing they said was that after issuing the veto, you have a month to come in, within a month, to justify why you use the veto.
If you don't justify it, will the veto be overruled?
It can't be overruled.
Veto cannot be overruled. So is it an effective additional procedure?
So that's what I said is the reform of convenience that allows the permanent five to
so the reform is more towards transparency, not being able to change anything.
But what the world is calling for is actually a more permanent seat. And one of the things that if there's going to be a dialogue, probably one of the outcome of this war, regardless of who wins and who loses, we may go into a more security dialogue for global security architecture. Because prior to this war itself, there's been a lot of disruption in treaty. NFT, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty between France and US and Russia was terminated by Putin. By Trump.
Trump, yes.
A lot of disruption happened. Yeah. So this might prompt as a call for a global.
Even on the energy thing, on the greening of the world, Trump disrupted almost everything.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want it. He wanted jobs to go back to Ohio, so he set up the coal again, and then he just announced that he's withdrawing from some of these things.
And if Trump was anything right, he was the fact that he identified Russia and China as potential adversaries and not competitors.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
That's what we can't. That is the right.
He did, yeah, he did. He took that decision.
So now they have been able to present their own reform. Actually, it was brought by Lancaster, the old resolution. But then what the world is actually calling for is the realignment of the seat.
Quickly, let's finish. So in terms of West Africa.
The problem is that the African seat. There's this call about who gets about 2 seats for Africa.
We want 1 at the Security Council. We don't want 2.
We're actually calling for 2.
Okay.
The North African seat was
to go to Egypt.
But the problem with
the Sub-Sahara.
The problem with Sub-Saharan Africa is the rivalry between Nigeria and South Africa. And no one is trying to yield ground. We don't know how a resolution or...
Well, the African Union can take a vote decision. Those who vote for Nigeria to represent Sub-Saharan Africa say yes. They say yes. And then North Africa can take that decision. Those who vote for Egypt to represent North Africa say yes. Egypt is in pole position because its competitors are unstable. Libya, if Gaddafi was there, that would be good. Algeria, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, they are not that strong. So Egypt will get it.
Egypt also being close to US.
In terms of philosophy.
We also get a form of kind of support because Algeria is seen as an unreliable ally. You get the point. But then the problem now is that, and what also shows that even if Africa is given a seat, that will be able to solve Africa's problem.
So let's finalize. So what do you see over the next 1 month in the with France finishing the election, should we expect a bit of commentary from France and pressure on ECOWAS to deal with the Mali, Burkina Faso, and the Niger insurgent situation?
I think already there's enough pressure on ECOWAS itself, but ECOWAS must be seen to be like putting its house in order, because you can't have about 2 or 3 coups within a year. It's kind of questions.
Do you think France will put pressure on ECOWAS to sort of deal with it?
Definitely, and I think it gives ECOWAS more advantage. You know, unlike the past where Macron has divided attention,
now he's focused.
He's focused. So ECOWAS can now use France as its spokesman on the global stage
against these insurgents.
That is if ECOWAS want to maintain the France-Afrique. Because another advantage we haven't seen.
But ECOWAS includes English, it includes Nigeria and Ghana. So it's not just about France.
One advantage that could be derived out of this coup situation is that already we have this burden of integration because of the division between the Francophone and Anglophone countries and how they outnumber the Anglophone countries. So if the Anglophone countries equally, when you take away France and Nigeria and Ghana, ECOWAS is virtually not in existence anymore. Aside
Côte d'Ivoire.
Aside Côte d'Ivoire, the rest.
Senegal is not bad.
But then, if you look at influence within West Africa, Ghana and Nigeria constitute a very huge influence.
Yeah, that's correct.
So if these two countries really want to chip away the influence of France-Afrique and kind of get inroads, this also presents them with another advantage.
But we are ECOWAS and we are talking democracy, so there's really no way for Ghana, Nigeria to sort of chip away, and we want democracy to be established in the sub-region.
But then you see, we also can't deny for ECOWAS itself has not really understand the problem. If you have 2 coups in Mali, then the question is what causes the 2 coups to succeed?
It's economic undertones, as the president was saying today. Economic undertones is very important.
But there's a deep historic division between the North and the South. So, for example, the coup was orchestrated because...
We have to.
Last submission.
Yeah, we have to wrap up.
The coup was orchestrated because the Southerners felt that the state was not able to impose its authority across board. That's for the Southerners. But what constitutes, security to a Southern Malian is actually state oppression to a Northern Malian.
I get it.
So until ECOWAS...
So there's a bit more anthropological studies to be done in Mali about the reasons for the coup. And you think ECOWAS has not done that work?
I don't think they've really done that.
Okay. So that is what will inform the solutions
best approach now, instead of giving deadlines for the military to present a roadmap to democracy, ECOWAS should for something like national reconciliation among competing groups.
So we can hear everybody.
Okay. Get to carry everybody along.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. That's Alhassan Bello.